Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. And this is your Sensei Al Bob, your griot, to tell you a story. And here's a story. Here's a story from some pictures from 1985. Can you see any of that? So I've been always telling you when I worked for New York City Housing Authority, that was right in the 80s. That's when we were doing all of this stuff in the Lower East Side. And I said that I worked for the New York City Housing Authority Police, and and I had a partner, right? And she was the first woman to ever graduate from the U.S. Army Ranger School, and she at the top of her class, right? And there she is. Here I am, and this is part of the. This is Quando, which is an old public school, PS something or other. Took it over, and I turned it into one of my zombie nightclubs. And there was a buddy of mine, Sandro Danini, and he had a thing called the Shuttle on 6th Street. And so when he lost his thing, I kind of turned it over to him and a bunch of other people. But I had, one of my Stone Soup dumpster dive restaurants. And the first one was on Thompson Street in Soho, over on the west side near McDougal. And anyway, and this was the staircase going down into the basement where there was a swimming pool, and that's where I had the dining room because the kitchen was right next to it. And this guy was a really interesting. He was a samurai. This guy right here, and his shtick was he would get big melons and fruit, and he was also a sushi chef, right? And so he had his big Ginsun sword, and he would, take all this fruit and stick it in a watermelon and stick his hand in there and take electric tape and wrap it around and then take his knife and go, boom, 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 real fast and pour it out. And you'd expect blood and fingers to go up there, but it was always this beautiful fruit salad that would pour out and people would eat it, and then he would do it again and again, and he started out with a big melon, smaller, and you get down to this place where the only thing that could fit in there was his hand, and he'd still go choo 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 choo, and you'd think there'd be fingers in there, but there weren't. And so this was a beautiful space. It had had no ballpark or anything, but it had a roof with a big chain link fence all around it. So we did art up there. So we did art everywhere you could think of, right? And this guy was from the New York Times. I forget his name, but he was a art reporter or cultural whatever you call it. And here's my sweetie again, right with Michael Curtin. Michael Curtin and I were the two young Turks of the electric. We were the youngest guys to have a master electrician's license. I was 32. He was 27. And he came from a family. I mean, I did too, the stalls, but he and I were both union apprentices, right? And there she is again. Now this girl could kill you 500 different ways, right? But she could look really nice in a dress, right? And I was her sweetie. I was her only sweetie at the time, and her partner, her police partner, right? Which is like being married, right? And I let her 100% be her. I never pulled her back. And this woman, she was part of our art collective, and she always looked like this. This wasn't how she looked for the show. She always looked like this. She said she was an alien. And this guy here, he was one of my 128 kids that I took off the street and kept from dying in gang violence and put them to work as an electrician. Right? And Dr. Jeff. And I got him into New York City Public Art School, and I got him um, working for Lester and George, and I got him working at George and George, a famous theater building company. And here's Anna Jemsen, another one of. She came from Sweden, and they paid her full nickel. They gave her like thousand, 2 or 3 grand a week or a month to be an artist in New York, and she stayed there 5 years, and she just kept dating junkies, right, losers, and then she got AIDS and died. It's almost like she wanted that. So here's Sandro, double doctor. He took that from me when he saw my ID, and it said double doctor, DD, double doctor. And here is Sandro the evening before I cut his hair. Here he is with his nice, beautiful headed hair. And here he is. I just cut half of it, right? And so down in the basement was some real catacombs, and people love catacombs. And this guy, he was an owner of the Tunnel Club, one of the owners, right? He was a real denizen. And again, you can tell this was, the gymnasium of the school, but that was our performance space. And there were all the classrooms, and we turned them into studios. And so this was, you had to shit in a bucket and then pour it down the thing, and that's what you washed your hands with. And this girl, a group of us, she and I forget her name, but she came from the Midwest, and she was just so sunny. And she was a friend of Beth Lapidus's. And about 2 years later, we did the terminal show. It was the East Coast terminal. Every bomb bullet tank that went to World War II went through that. So here's some kids from the National and down to the Arts. And they're upstairs, and we did this show here, the nightclub art show, Double D, the slave ship, Quando slave ship, and we had them because collab and art for the people, and what other art organization to help put together. So here's Michael Curtin in the beginning of his art career, when he had potential of being something. And he was, he was a pretty good artist and a very good conceptual artist. He did this piece at OK Harris where he brought in like a ton of dirt and put down sod and covered the whole floor with sod and watered it and put lights, and it turned green, and it was like someone's golf course. And then he turned up the lights, turned up the water. The show, it was, oh, look at this, it's so green. He had everyone take off their shoes and walk through it, and oh, it was so much fun. And that's conceptual art. I was a conceptual art. I threw lightning bolts, right? So this guy, I forget his name, but he was a judge, and I caught him rolling a joint. And look at that face. He's like, ooh, 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 ooh. What are you going to do with that? He'd already been blackmailed 100 times, so he knew which way that was going. So that was in the 80s, down Ronald Reagan, totally screwing everyone. And this is the 90s. Oh, what's his name? Bill Clinton screwing everyone. There's the big penis in the center of Asheville. It's no longer there because they called it misogynistic. Why not take down the Washington Monument? So here's downtown Asheville in 1991. Nobody's there. And this is the big fancy uh, cemetery where all the art folk of the 20s were. Here's my apartment. I had this great apartment, 3 bedrooms, big living room, big kitchen, big dining room, 2-car garage, a storage space down below, gas and electricity included, along with heat, and my rent was $175. Here's what when I turn. This is one of my light sculptures in my apartment. So here at 91, so I was 60, 70, 80, 90. I was 40. Here I am, 41 years old. That's what I look like at 41 years old. Not too bad. And I was a dude in Asheville. Here's this girl was a grammar school teacher, and she ran into me, and it was like a buzzsaw of love because she came from a holler up in Madison County when the Fed sent me up to Madison County to negotiate the deal for the I-26 corridor with the you know Bud and Sean. Um, that was one of his granddaughters, right? And he said she's just graduating from college up there in Boone Teachers College, and she's got a job in Asheville. And I want you to go up and meet her and watch out for her. I said, watch out for her? Yeah, be her boyfriend. And I said, but how old is she? Oh, she's about 23. And I said, well, I'm pushing 50. He said, well, that's good. That's just the right age. So there she is. And she truly loved and adored me. And now there's what I could have stayed with and it would have been fun, but she had issues. Well, I won't go into detail, but they were more, and I was Mr. Shrink. So, and the more we, you know, sliced the bologna, the more she got a little. So here's another buddy of mine from Asheville. He was quite talented, a really good writer, really good actor, really good everything he put his mind to. And he was in the military, and he kind of got fucked up in the military. So they gave him a chunk of change and gave him like 10 years to go to college and, like $800 a week. And I was the one guy he could hang with that he could say anything. I could listen to it, understand it, and help him out. And here's another one of it was another one of his army buddies who really just wanted to kill everyone. He just wanted to kill everyone. And he had me around with him. So this is us, and here is, um, there was about 6 of us. And these guys were all vets, all totally messed up. And because they, they didn't have the excuse of Iraq or Afghanistan. They were fighting in wars all around the world that no one knew about, all in Africa, in the Mid East, in parts of Serbia, and they were just assassinating people left and right. And they were not just the army; they were Navy, Air Force. They were like the Delta Force. And I don't know. I have this kind of, I'm like, you know, the hills are alive with mercenaries and all the punks around here who got all their guns. And some guy over there, some guy from Florida was shooting his AK off his deck, and it went through somebody's, um, you know, living room and got grandma on the head. And because they were holler folk, it was no big deal. Anyway, when you think you're privileged, you can almost do anything. I mean, isn't that what um, Carrot Head said? I can shoot anybody in the street. Yes, there he is. His grandfather was a general. Oh, here's Vincent Moron. So I knew Moron. He did Ticketron. He made millions at Ticketron. Then he came to Asheville, tried to buy up the place, and he Asheville Community, the theater there, Pack Place, had been a black theater, and the blacks owned it, and the blacks had raised $1 million to fix it up the way they wanted to. And he said, "Well, I'm from Broadway. I can really make it." Blah blah blah. He talked them into, had them sign everything over to him, and he was going to take it over for his own little use. But he broke so many laws that I went and got a really good lawyer from North Carolina Capitol and showed all the evidence of what he did. And you know, I started called art. And I said, "What's it? The Artist Trust, right?" And this is all the artists that I got together. And this was a hearing just before all the papers were going to get signed, and Vincent Moron would get control of everything. And basically, the lady who represented the state attorney general basically had all these great, things that she drew, and that if you do this, this will break this law and this, and you'll get 20 years. And if you do this will be another 40 years. So if he was going to do what he planned to do, he was going to lose about 80 years of his life, and he was already 70. And so he thought I was the best thing since cream cheese until then. So here is the board of the artist trust. So all instead of all the rich people taking over, this board of artists took over, and the rich people realized, okay, good, let them do it. They'll do all the hard work. They'll get it all organized, and then they'll get bored with it, and then we'll just take it over. And I kept telling everyone that's what was going to happen, and that's just what's going to happen. Just like in the 1970s when people were going for Roe, I said, no, no, you have to get the Congress to pass a law. Oh no, no, the Supreme Court. I said, no, Supreme Court can say it's okay. They can also say it's not. Oh, they'll never do that. Well, 50 years later, here we are. Uh, that's going to happen with gay marriage. That's going to happen with transgender people. Just there will be a just like the Germans had the Nuremberg laws that basically codified all these different, Jews in, not even humans, nor were gays, LGBTQ, all into the death camps, socialists into the death camp, union guys into the death camps. And so we had meetings after meetings, and we did stuff. And we, like I said, we organized everything, got it all nicely done, and very egalitarian, and brought the black vote in, even though everyone's white here. There aren't. I kept saying we need, this is a black theater. We need, right. And then this guy, he was he went to Juilliard, and he was way younger than me, but I knew him in New York before I left, right? And so he was a snotty, "Oh, I'm from Juilliard." I never really mentioned that. And so these are all the kids of beer school. These were all the artists from UNCA. And that year, the from 92, 3, 4, 5, 6, they were some pretty interesting. And so these guys were great writers, right? And she was great investigative writer. And so she and I, you know, um, up there where the paper mills were, they were just dumping raw, deadly chemicals into the Nolichucky and the French Broad, and killing people. Right, and they're still doing it, but this time it's even more fun because they're dumping radioactive materials into the rivers, and now people glow. Other than just having cancer, they glow. They're like lightning bugs. It's quite amusing. And this is the Pink House. So there were a number of these abandoned buildings along Broadway, going from downtown Asheville in towards UNCA, where this guy, the UNCA was a college of herbology, right, and homeopathy, and it was a leading place in the world. And when he died, he deeded everything over. He owned a good third of that portion of Asheville. I guess it's, what is that, north northeast Asheville, kind of along the French Broad. And anyway, so here is the theater crew. Um, this is I had a gigantic loft on Tingle Alley, in Asheville, and I paid nothing for it. It was like quite quite exorbitant, and we had just party after every Friday. We had beer school, and it was quite nice. I mean, it was the Masonic Lodge. Those guys kept it up very nicely, and then they moved someplace different. And there's David Hopes. He was a literary teacher at UNCA. Great guy, loads of fun. He's always up for anything. Um, he was a tenured professor, so he didn't care. So this was um, this other place downtown uh, near Melody Row, and it's it was like a big open garage, and we turned into a black theater and a art show. And um, Wolf, who was one of the guys who started Poetry Alive and did poetry slams, right? So Asheville was one of the first places to do poetry slams on the planet, and we did it in this black theater all the time. And there's this guy. He was really, really a performer, and so he could always win. And here is oh, what's her name? Moog's wife. She was quite a force in the art world. And here's my ubiquitous red truck. This thing was indestructible. I bought it for $90 because the guy thought it wouldn't run out of his back of his farm in upstate New York. And I bought my farm mechanic. I was a farm electrician. He was a farm mechanic, and he just got it to run. And I was working at this place that spray painted stuff. So they freaking spray painted my truck um, red, like killer red, and my tires black. You know, I mean, they're still the same tires. And so here is a one of the Pride parades, and we went through um, super duper Bible Belt little town near Asheville. In bloody Madison. But all the Madison, OGs, they were my buds. I got them $1 billion highway right where they wanted it. So there's the amazing investigative reporter girl. This girl was her trainee, and this was our bud. This guy, he was a great writer, really funny, um, and he loved me, loved me, loved me, loved me. And he said, I just love you because you're not gay and you love me back. And it's not about sex. You just love me. And I let him because he had a really straight job in a bank and he could never, let himself go. But when he was with me, and so when we were down around, and here he is, I mean, he just would go hog wild, right? And so for the 3 years until he moved to a more, you know, and then here is like Halston. He's a really brilliant computer kid, geek. And there is my mermaid, Madeline. And she was another bud who just loved me, loved me, loved me. And um, there's off of, just below Mount Mitchell, off of Forest Road 227, there is this river that comes straight out of the ground and goes and becomes the Noachukki. And she and I used to live out there because I took her out there and she just wouldn't leave. And she was like a mermaid there, right? And it was totally paranormal. And she just loved living there. And the woman who is the forest ranger there came up. And when this is like really sacred place. You step on the wrong plant, that's a $10,000 fine. And she and the Forest Service lady really, really hit it off. And we had made this super duper special sacred site. And the Forest Service lady was Cherokee. And so those two girls really, really, uh, went at it and loved each other. And I was their, I was the meat in their sandwich, And And what was great about all of this, none of this was planned. No, I mean, this was Asheville was a dead town in the 90s because they didn't finish paying off their depression debt until 96. So nobody lent them any money. So you could buy any house in Asheville for $12. And there were tons of them that I didn't even buy them. I just squatted them, right? And this lady ran a Greek restaurant. Asheville really had no real restaurants. Now it's got too many of them. And she loved me, and she always cooked moussaka for me, even though nobody else even knew what it was. And here's more of the Artist Trust. We should to get a flashlight or something, but I can't even see. So this was at Richard's Coffee Shop. That was our downtown before any restaurants. Richard had a coffee shop. He was a real New Yorker, and when he opened that place up, I was like, there was another restaurant called Cafe on the Square, and that was my office. And it kind of had this gigantic glass window that faced the whole square, right? So you could see everything. And I see on Broadway this guy cleaning out this crappy, nobody was ever in it for the last 20 years. And, I go over and I just kind of, hey, who are you? He's like, speaking New Yorker. So you're from New York. So am I. And his lovely wife, she just loved the heck out of me. And anyway, so he always wanted a coffee shop, and there it was. So here is this place, that sacred, really amazing place just below Mount Mitchell, and it's always foggy, like 90% of the time. This is like a nice day, and it's always like this. It was like, and so here's where Mount Mitchell is back here, but this is down in there. And down over there is where this water that becomes the Noachukki pops out of the water, out of the ground. And again, this is what it's like even when it's sunny. I mean, this picture really does take the cake. I mean, it's like that's why they call it the Smoky Mountains, right? The Smokies. It's always like and these special paranormal spots, right? And so we lived. I made a camp right underneath these gigantic bushes, really tall bushes, and underneath were like cleared out. And I put our tents down there and made. I didn't have a real fire pit. I went and got propane gas, big tanks, and took burners from gas stoves and put them there so we could cook, right? And so this is what it looked like in the fall. And these were all around. I forget what they call these. They're beautiful, beautiful, and they were from spring to fall. These things were always coming out, not all at once, but a bush here and a bush there, and it was just. And like I said, we had the head. Just as I said, the head. And so again, I got to the. I was working for this project called the STAR program, where I went and found the worst kids in the worst class in the worst school in the worst part of town, and took him away, and gave him, got him tutoring and exceptional educational experiences, so they could right, and so the rest of that class could just do as good as they could, and for a pittance. We got the black because the schools, even though they weren't segregated, were because the black schools were in the black neighborhoods. Our education is run by real estate. So anyway, on behind um, in the black last part of the black neighborhood of downtown Asheville, I basically got all the black folk together, and there was this building that had been a car dealership. So it had ramps and parking and ramps and parking, where guys would because they were selling cars right in the middle of downtown Asheville, so there was no big lot. And so we turned it into a nightclub slash mall slash cultural center slash you name it. And that chunk of change that was supposed to go to the black community at Pack Place went to this. And we took over the Orange Peel, which was a black. So up there where I was living, with my mermaid and the Captain America, this is what she had. You know, to come to get to where we were, there was no roads except this like a logging trail that these horses and her grandpa had them. He was a logger up there, and so this is downtown Asheville before it really took off, before the tourists showed up. Right? And so this is in my apartment. You know, once a week we'd have the art scene, and here is um, the art we did in Pack Place. Here I am. It shows I haven't. I'm starting to get chunky here. I'm probably 250 pounds here. Well, I'm gonna have to leave because I hear the thunder in the background, and I said I'd come back. Let's see who's here. Can't read that. Anthony, is that you, Ant? Tried to call you a few times. How you doing? Anyway, those are some pictures of the '90s, the '80s, and the '90s, and those were economic times way worse than we are experiencing right now. I mean, not even close. You know, New York City in the '70s had 30,000 police like they do now, and then they went bankrupt and they cut it down to 8,000. So you think crime is so bad, and not really. The thing is, the kind of shootings that we're having were being done in places like Nicaragua and El Salvador and Chile and places like that, and in Africa, and that's kind of what happened to all of that. And now it's come home, right? But it's not nothing like the death squads that were in El Salvador. So anyway, maybe I'll speak to you tomorrow. I'll catch you later because the clouds are coming in. It could start raining hard any second. These are the mountains. I can feel the tingle. The tingle.